Hello viewers at home, my name is Bukola Oriola and thank you for tuning in today to Imprisoned show. Tonight I have two great guests for you. In fact, they were the first guests that we had on Imprisoned show. If we look back to 2 years ago, they were the very first people that came here to enlighten us about human trafficking. And today they are back to tell us what they have been doing in the past 2 years, the progress they have made so far, the challenges that they have encountered in terms of helping victims of human trafficking in Minnesota. They are Civil Society Director, Linda Miller. And Linda, thank you for coming tonight again. It's good to see you again after 2 years. And we have Immigration Attorney Salima Kaku. Salima has been working hard to help various victims. Thank you so much for coming back here. We are really grateful for having you both tonight, and we hope that you'll be able to tell us what you have been doing in the past 2 years, the progress you have made so far, and we want to hear good news from, even though this is a critical issue, a criminal issue in our society, we want to see the good news in terms of the victims that are being rescued and, how far you have gone with that. Thank you so much for coming tonight. So I'm going to be starting with you, Linda. From 2 years ago to now, what has been happening so far in terms of progress work, advocacy, rescuing, and the challenges you have encountered?
Well, I think it's really interesting because what we are beginning to see is more referral of children who have been trafficked. And it's a very, very different thing when you have to find a foster placement before you can start with the legal work for immigration, and you have to find someone that speaks the child's language, and you have to make sure that you don't re-victimize the child and protect the child. And then there's vulnerabilities. The children are so scared and they've been told by the traffickers what to say. And so if you don't want to scare them more, you want to be working with them with their welfare in mind. And so it's really, really a different and more difficult work. And around the United States, there's been more of a recognition now, after a few years of helping human trafficking victims, that it's harder for us to actually find the children and work up cases based on what happened to the children. And it's really a very different type of practice that we've both had to adjust to and learn. And what we've found now is that when we practice and tell people that we are practicing a child welfare response to human trafficking of children, then people want to have us work with the children that they're seeing. So let's say the school counselor, let's say the ethnic person in an ethnic group, let's say the doctors and nurses. These people, when they hear words from us that indicate we are not thinking that these children are criminals, we are treating these children as victims with their welfare mainly on our mind, that changes things for people that are referring cases. They want to refer them. If they think that they're making a call that's going to result in a child getting charged with something, even runaway or delinquency or anything, they're much less likely to call. And you know, Bukola, that it takes a person of trust.
Yes.
And so the bond of trust has to form, and especially with children, the bond of trust has to form. And the trafficker has done everything to make sure that bond doesn't form. And so it's really new, and what we've found that when we are projecting that we are going to treat these kids as victims, and that gets out with all the presentations and your show, then we have had a 41% increase in the last 2 years of children who have been trafficked that are referred than the way it was before.
And there are certain challenges that we face in the immigration practice when we are working with victims of trafficking who are children. The most important is to be a child means you are under the age of consent. You are not an adult where you can make decisions for yourself. You are under that age of consent, and therefore the law provides protections for people who are identified as minors. However, children who are trafficked don't walk around with birth certificates and passports and identity documents that confirm that they are children. Sometimes when you see someone who says to you, I am 18, but they look 13 or 12, it is hard to prove exactly how old they are. And if they have been trained because of their trafficking and the harm they have suffered, if they have been trained by the traffickers to repeat a specific age to protect the trafficker by saying, I'm an adult, then when they repeat that, despite us knowing that they may be children or our deep suspicions, we can't prove it. And there isn't much out there unless you do testing of bones or teeth, or involves a quite expensive medical procedures to prove age. And so one of the challenges we've had is to identify child victims by being able to prove their age.
Wow. So if you're unable to prove their age, what happens to that child?
Well, then they become the age they say they are. And if you are over the age of 16, there are certain cooperative actions you have to do with law enforcement to help them catch the people who are harming you.
Yes.
When you are a minor under that age, there are protections in the law that says that we understand as a child you may not be in a position to cooperate. But if they say they are 18, then they have to cooperate. And often the trauma that they have suffered, they often can't even say they have been victimized, let alone cooperate. So we face the challenge of can't prove your age, can't get you to admit what happened to you, and you are not in a position to cooperate, which makes it very difficult. So one of the things that Linda has been stressing, which I think is very important, is that when it comes to child victims, there's stability and safety and feeling of that I am taken care of becomes the paramount thing, because only after they have that will they be in a position eventually to tell their story. The problem is our laws are set up that to stay here in America, you have to be able to be classified as a victim. And so it's a chicken or the egg thing, which comes first. And I think with children, the issue is they're not ready at the beginning. And so what do we do when we have to classify them in order to allow them to stay, but they need to stay in order to be able to tell their story?
Yes. So in this situation where there is the issue of classification, and the most important issue for you to help them is to give them proper welfare to settle down and kind of recover. Are you able to provide that welfare, or is there services or resources for those kind of welfare for the kids?
Well, you approach the case differently, because if you find a child, you have to, if there's a child unaccompanied, so there's no parent in sight or someone that could legally say that they are in charge of the child, we have to contact child welfare.
Okay.
And so then we work with child welfare to get a safe placement. And we usually have to work with the county attorney because the child welfare, first child protection comes in, and then if they make a placement, then we have to go to the county attorney with that placement. So it has to be going in front of the judge to confirm that placement. So it does get you immediately into the county system, and that's good in a way because those kids are being taken care of the whole time through the child welfare system.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, and another thing that's happening that people around the country are recognizing is that the children who have been trafficked have usually had, at least 80% of them have already had contact with the child welfare system. And it hasn't been recognized that they're being trafficked.
Wow. And these children who have had contact with child welfare services, are they citizens of the U.S. or residents, or are they immigrants, or a mixture of both?
There's a mixture of both. You know, someone that comes from another country has less security. There's more risk for them to be trafficked here because of the barriers of language, culture, more easily manipulated. And they've probably had some hard hits in the past. Maybe they've come out of Rwanda and experienced both of their parents being killed in front of them. They have already post-traumatic stress disorder, and so then they're more liable to be vulnerable to persuasion. So these children are having contact with the child welfare system, but the child welfare system is now not educated enough to detect it or to be asking those questions. And so there is a law in Congress now, and we hope that that goes through, whereby all the child welfare systems in the whole United States will get training. And so then they'll recognize the risks, the children at risk earlier, and if 80% of the children are having contact with them already, if they can recognize even half of those risks at an earlier stage without the severe trauma that the child goes through for a long period of time, then we have a much better way of overcoming the barriers we just talked about.
Exactly. And now the other side of it is, what happens if a child comes into the contact of immigration, say Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they find a minor child and they do not know where the parents are, and they find out the parents are in another country? One of the things they seriously have to consider is reunification of the child with the parent. In that situation, instead of the child being here, the idea would be to send the child back to the parent. In a normal world, we can all understand why that is so important. If a child ends up in a different country, we would hope that they would be somehow reunited with their family. The issue with human trafficking is, if the reason the child is here is through the tacit agreement of the family to let the child go and become victimized, maybe because of desperation, money, tough situation in the home country, then by sending that child back, we are pretty much setting that child up for re-victimization. So we have a system that has the best intentions that may in the end re-victimize children, and then we have a system that allows them to stay but may not recognize that they are victims. So we need to get those systems talking and connected to each other.
So how are you going to do that?
So we've worked on a recent case where we were able to get the Immigration and Customs Enforcement in a matter involving a young child, possible sex trafficking, to stop the possibility of deportation. We didn't do it ourselves. It's that they recognized and we stepped in and offered help. That it may be in the best interest of this child to not send them back yet. Allow them to be in the child welfare system so that we can figure out what's going on with this child. But as Linda can tell you, some of the challenges are, we sometimes meet children whose languages nobody speaks, nobody around them. They are rare languages. Sometimes we think that when we see somebody who appears of Latin descent, that they speak Spanish. But we're learning that there are people who may look Latino, but they're actually of Native American groups in Central and South America where they speak broken Spanish at best. So what do you do when you end up with a child victim where the language spoken is not the language that an officer or someone who can translate understands? If we don't catch them then, they could get deported or they could end up undetected in the child welfare system.
And actually, what was very interesting in that case is some of the facts we discovered are that this young girl was told she was to make money and send it back. And she was really, really going to do that. She was hell-bent to do that. And then she told us that the reason that she needs to do that is her father is in trouble and he may get killed if she doesn't. And then she said that when she sent the money back, he was going to send her younger sisters along the same path. And it had been a horrendous path that she had gone through. And she had suffered abuse along the way. And so we, in that case, we were very lucky because we had a county attorney who was cognizant of this and really realized that if he didn't do something to stop this at this point, this child would be coming back again the same way, and her younger sisters were going to be too. And so the importance of one child, it's so important. Another success I want to talk about is we now have gotten a trafficker in federal prison for life.
Good.
One child. It took one child. And you may know that when they sentence a, let's say the trafficker is a man, they sentence a man that's a trafficker for an adult, the sentence is much less than when it's a child. And so this one child, we took to the FBI. We first got her stabilized. She was in a place of safety. She had had drug and alcohol rehabilitation because she had been drugged and given alcohol. And then they started the case. They found out he had 7 aliases and was wanted in 10 states for trafficking. And so then with her testimony, giving that huge long sentence, and then he went to all the other states and pled guilty too, and then those were run concurrent, so then he ended up with one big life sentence forever. And in the meantime, that girl was never endangered by him. So, because he was in prison the whole time.
Yes.
So it was a fabulous success, and when you realize what one child can do, it makes it worth us taking the time, the psychological resources it takes, the patience it takes to get the child stabilized so that we can get something as good as that.
Good.
And and the government's response has come such a long way. I mean, at this point, I think the government has had enough experience also in working in these types of cases that we find ourselves, sometimes in a very good position to be able to call and say, we're willing to help this person if you are just willing to not deport them. And they are very open to that because they do not want to deport victims either.
Yes.
So that has been a major change because if you think about it, if your everyday job is to catch illegal people day in, day out, but then you also have to not catch and deport people who may be victims, they run sometimes against each other. And so they have a difficult job of wearing both hats. And it has come a long way.
Good. And the state of Minnesota, how far with that in terms of victims being identified as victims and not prostitutes for those who are in sex slavery?
Well, I think it's really good. It's come along on the federal level. The training that the federal agents have had has been intense, and they have more time and energy to train within that group. At the state level, we still have a problem with that happening. There's 3 state laws under which they charge traffickers. One is solicitation for prostitution, one is promotion of prostitution, and one is sex trafficking. All 3 of those have the definition of prostitution in there. So every time you convict someone for a sex trafficking type of issue, you're victimizing and not giving dignity to the victim because they are called a prostitute. And I've had cases where they have had they've had to be identified as a prostitute to get services under the state law. So then you know very well that's going to be carried in their records. And you know how records are now in the information age. They're available to everyone. So even though in that case we have a judge that doesn't want that in there, we have a prosecutor that doesn't want that in there, we have a probation officer that doesn't want that in there, every time we get a new report, that comes in.
So what efforts are you making to stop this?
The state doesn't seem to want to change that law. So what I'm trying to do now is that law that's going to change the federal law is going to be applicable to all the states, so that these kids are going to get caught at the child welfare level, and they're going to be put into the child welfare system, which means they aren't charged with a crime. They don't have to be a prostitute in order to get services. They have to be a child in need of services. CHIPS, it's called. So,
what about adults? Adults that are sex slaves and not prostitutes. So what about those type of victims?
It's, you know, in the federal system, those people have never had to be called a criminal to get the services.
Are they called prostitutes in the federal law, or they are called sex slaves?
They're called victims of sexual assault or victims of sex trafficking.
Okay.
And because there isn't that definition in there. And when you face it, if we all close our eyes and think of what comes to mind when we hear the word prostitute, we know that is not, cannot be, that's not the same thing as what comes to mind when you get a victim in the back of your mind.
Yes.
And so this has to change. And it's not changing fast enough for me, but I'm looking forward to this child welfare, because if, you know, most of the victims are getting into that criminal system, not where they are a criminal, but they're a victim of a criminal when they're children.
Okay, we are going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Salima telling us about the new law that President Obama passed and how that law will help victims of human trafficking. Thank you. Please don't go away. Welcome back. Salima, President Obama passed a law recently, and can you tell us about that law and how it is beneficial for victims of human trafficking?
So President Obama recently made an executive order on June 15th that is referred to as Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals. So it's DACA, but it's more commonly known as the DREAM Act law, because there is legislation in Congress to help this very population that has not been able to be passed despite coming up year after year after year. And it's referring to the problem of young children who are brought to America when they have no choice in the matter. They grow up in America, but when they get to be of adult age, they all of a sudden realize that they are undocumented, illegal, and have no pathway to move forward in society. Often their family is in America, they have no family back home. If you meet them on the street, they sound as American as anyone else. They have pledged to the flag of the United States growing up in the same elementary school as our children, but it's just that the truth of the matter is they don't have the documents to prove that they are American. And so what this particular law says is if you are under the age of 16 when you were brought to America, and you are under 31 now, and you have been in the United States this whole time, and you have either are in high school or have graduated from high school or are in a GED program or have successfully completed it, that you can ask for permission to remain here and to get employment authorization for 2 years at a time. And this is a stopgap measure because the DREAM Act law, which would be a pathway for citizenship for these children, has not yet passed. Now, for me, what's interesting about this is many young people who have lived in the shadows of society this whole time are now going to come forward, maybe to an attorney, maybe to a community organization, where they are going to say, can you help me with this Obama law? And it's an opportunity for us in the legal profession or in community organizations to figure out if that young person is here out of their own volition or if they were brought here or put in any endangerment, especially if they have been victimized as a victim of trafficking. So it's almost like an opportunity to screen for help.
So will this, sorry to cut you, will this help those kind of children that you talked about earlier who cannot, whom you cannot really identify their age or cannot, properly place because they don't have maybe a birth certificate or something to prove their age? Will this law help those kind of
Well, this law
victims?
requires you to be able to show your age. But what it also does do is for those who are able to show their age, whatever that is that their birth certificate says, they are able to get a legal document that allows them to remain in the USA. For some people, it's that next step, that step of not being afraid and living under their shadows, that may give them the strength to come forward and tell their stories. Sometimes we get people who are severe victims of trafficking, labor trafficking even, where they're coming forward many, many years later when their lives have stabilized. It's possible that this stability will allow people to come forward. We are estimating that there's 1.8 million people in the United States who will be eligible for legalization under this law. So it is a really great opportunity for those in our profession and in community organizations to keep an ear out for, are we perhaps running into victims of human trafficking?
Thank you. And then in terms of identifying victims, from your experience, what has been the trend? Do you see individual victims or group victims?
So generally, the work that I've done with organizations like civil society, we have been assisting people who we identify as individuals. What that means is it's not often a major raid or a major law enforcement action that results in identifying the victims. It's that through community organizations, grassroots efforts, neighborhoods, churches, doctors, nurses, people who are paying attention, identify people who they think might be victims and come forward. The issue with that is that you are working with one victim at a time, which can be exhausting for law enforcement versus a big raid where you have many victims. Maybe even it may not have the same sensational media attention, but at the end of the day, when you add up those individual victims, you're talking about a lot of people. People don't need 20, 30 domestic servants, they only need one.
Yes.
People don't, so when you think about how many people are living in labor slavery in individual homes, they will never get detected if we're waiting for a raid. They're only going to get detected when somebody identifies that this person might need help and somehow helps them get help.
So I think the community needs to pay attention to that, so we are able to identify more individual people, even though there are still people who are groups and are still suffering. And that also brings about the question of somebody who notices something is up but is afraid. Yes.
Yeah, I think Linda can address that because there are tips that have been through our experiences. So.
Well, the key person that can help someone that is being trafficked is the person that that person trusts. And so all of our community members and professionals need to realize that they can be that person of trust. Particularly certain professions are in contact with people that are trafficked all the time. Public health nurses, other nurses, maternity ward nurses, teachers, social work or counselors at schools. I've been talking to schools more and more now. And that is amazing because if you go to certain schools and certain college level classes, you can tell those people are in contact with people that are at risk every day, really at risk. It's just amazing. And I've talked to those teachers too, and they have said, you should see the essays that we're getting when we ask for an essay to be written. It's amazing what our kids are really at risk for now with the internet and the communications the way they are, and the travel is much easier now. So we're seeing more and more in that way. And so I tell those kids, you are the ones that can be the person of trust that that person who's trafficked can come to you and ask, what do you think? And you're the one that can help them to more knowledge and to form that trust in a stronger way so that you can influence them to get themselves out of risk. And I think every kid is at risk, really, I do. And they're just at risk in different ways. The rich kid that has too much computer time and his or her parents are away at work all the time, they have a lot of risk. The kid, we have one wonderful case manager who was very wealthy, and her father gave her a Cadillac, and she was in high school, and she was driving a Cadillac, and because she was of a certain age, being young, she was vulnerable, and this guy said, lady, he's dissing you. You just are more beautiful than this. You deserve a better car than this. So pretty soon, he had alienated her parents, and he had made himself the person that she trusted. And they say that give me a girl of 15, I'll promise her heaven, and she'll follow me to hell. So that's what she did. She started dancing, and pretty soon he was the one driving the car. So it doesn't, poverty is a major factor, but every child, I think, is at risk. So we need to educate all of our kids.
That does not mean that you have to be living in poverty to become vulnerable. Right. Rich kids are also vulnerable.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And you have a support group for survivors. Can
Yes.
you educate us about that, please?
Yes, well, in what we've done a lot of study now because we have a group that's very interested in working on this issue. And we've looked at a lot of the curriculums for groups like this, and they usually come out of the juvenile justice system. So lots of times the people that they're doing the groups with are already in custody, some sort of custodial situation. Well, our kids, because we work differently and we don't allow our kids to get into juvenile justice situations, the kids are, what their situation is that they are now being witnesses against the trafficker. And that is a stressor, a big stressor. Lots of times they're in danger while they're doing it, and it's a lot of stress. What's going to happen if he gets out? What if he doesn't get found guilty?
Mm-hmm.
All of that type of thing. And so the group that we have are in safe places because, of course, we couldn't be working with them unless they were in a safe place, and they're doing good, but they're being really having a hard time with this prosecution part because it's so much stress. And so this is a whole different group of kids that are in a safe place, but they're very vulnerable. They have had PTSD. They will be likely to again. And the traffickers are now preying on kids that have just depression or manic depressive, a lot of different syndromes. They know to look for them because they're more vulnerable. So you have a group of kids that are already vulnerable becoming more and more vulnerable until we help them. So they don't have good judgment, and they make bad decisions. And if they go into a juvenile justice system, they'll be meeting people that have also bad decision making. And then they'll be trafficked again. And
so what
again.
does this support group offer them?
Well, we've had to work on a protocol that is more reaching out to integrate them back into society in a favorable way, not by saying they've been bad, making sure they know that they are not the one that caused the problem, and that if they were charged with a runaway, that's ridiculous. It's the adult that's at fault, not the runaway. And so you keep on saying that, you keep on getting that into their head, and they can come out of this. So we've had to sort of work up a whole new curriculum, and we're working with other groups that have noticed the same type of thing, and they're very victim-orientated. They've been working with people as victims, not as criminals. And so it's a whole different level of what we have to do.
Okay, so this support group, is it open to other survivors from other organizations, or
well,
it's
we're
exclusive?
working with, I'm sorry, we're working with people that, other groups that get their own victims in too.
Okay.
Yeah, so the victims mingle in that way.
And then for Salima, how can a victim identify him or herself as a victim of human trafficking to be able to come out, especially where majority of the victims are also going through domestic abuse?
That's actually a very good question. I think sometimes we, to survive, I think, we have to downplay the amount of pain we are in to survive. And what I often see with victims who come forward is how brave how brave they are to have taken the step to tell their story to another human being. Because to survive, they have to tell themselves, this is not so bad, other people are, I'm not the only one, somehow rationalize the pain and the suffering. In order to be a victim of trafficking under the law, what it is referring to is where you lose your self-control. Someone else controls major life functions. When you wake up, when you go to bed, what you do during the day, what you eat, where you go, who you talk to, who you don't. Those are all elements of our life where we have free will. But in a trafficking situation, whether it's sex or labor trafficking, someone else has control over all those elements of your life. And so if you feel that you are helpless because of that control, it is very important to be brave and come forward. And there are laws to protect people. The government wants to protect people. They want people to get at a point in their lives where they get to make their own decisions and not have somebody make those decisions for them. But without that first brave step, it is very hard for us to help.
We actually had a girl who was studying trafficking in her class as her final project with a group of, the class was divided up into 4 groups and they each picked their topic, and her group had picked trafficking. And then she was at the airport and she was solicited while she was taking that class.
Wow.
And she said no. And he started feeling her arm and saying, come on, I've got the ticket. We're going to go on this wonderful Caribbean tour. And she finally had to say, no. And she said, what gave me the strength to do that is that I was studying in that group of kids this topic, and I recognized what he said didn't make sense in those terms, that he was going to try to traffic me. And so she's a terrific young lady and is going around with us and talking about this too, how she rejected this and how the fact that she was able to read stories about victims and think about it and talk to other kids her age about that problem gave her the strength at that really important time to say no.
So would you recommend that human trafficking should be studied in schools to prevent the crime or to prevent somebody from becoming a victim?
When you think about it as parents, we talk to our kids about drugs, we talk to them about relationships. There are topics that we are trained as parents to talk to our children about. Well, perhaps we need to think about the idea of human trafficking being part of that conversation with kids so that they are aware and they can know the difference between somebody is being nice to me to somebody is manipulating me, and I may end up in danger with no control over my life if I follow them. The entry age for prostitution, which we believe is victimization, but the popular term prostitution is preteen teens. So we may find them at 45, 46 when they're getting arrested or in their 30s, but they started out as babies, as preteens and teens. And so what we can do as parents to have that conversation with our children is extremely important.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to take a short break and we will be right back. Please don't go away.
take us to somewhere we'll never turn back. You'll heal from the pain that's been laid upon you. Just feel the sun that's trying to shine through. Don't give up now, life will get better. Just take my hand and you'll understand that you're not alone, and I'm here by your side. You can hold on to me and I'll help you break free. Let's tear through this wall, it's been black in you. There's a brand new side that's waiting just for you. You've got what it takes, so find the strength that's inside of you and let it carry you through. So come with me to a faraway place. I'll mend all your fears and dry all your tears. It's not your fault. Thank you.
We light this candle in honor of victims who have lost their lives as a result of human trafficking, and we hope that their soul rests in perfect peace. Thank you for staying with us. I want to ask about the Blue Heart or the Blue Campaign, you said. So what is that about?
The Blue Campaign is a organization, actually the top organizations in the federal government. So the State Department, that all have to do about trafficking. Office of Homeland Security, the State Department, USCIS, and ICE. The heads, Janet Napolitano, who is the director of Office of Homeland Security, organized this under President Obama. And so what they are trying to do is examine why we, with all the money that we've put into this and time and energy, why things have not worked and how to fix them. And so there has been a lot of progress because of this. We see it in that the federal agents are, there's more of them. They're getting the processing done faster. They're listening to suggestions on how to process them better. And they are coordinating things better so that our victims can get help rather than, I think, like it was more like 2 years for a T visa before. Now it's about down to 1. And we just got a continued presence, which is, that's legal jargon, but these things are important to the victims because the way we get resources to take care of these victims is through getting these statuses for them. So if we can process them and get them legal. They're safer, and under the federal government, they have benefits. So that's important to everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, both of you, for
Thank you.
coming tonight. However, before you go, I have a surprise for you. So please don't go away. Stick around for the surprise that I have for Salima and Linda tonight.
Thank you.
This is the first time that I'm presenting this award in the studio, and I'm honored to present this award to these two important people. Without these people, I don't think I will be here alive or producing this show. So, Salima, I'm so grateful for your efforts as you advocated for me at immigration level to get me to where I am today. God bless you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your efforts at helping other victims of human trafficking. And for Linda, for the good work that you have been doing and you keep doing efforts, Leslie, all the time, trying hard to help victims, including me. I am so grateful, and on behalf of others, I say thank you.
Wow.
Thank you both
Thank
for the
you.
good work that you are doing. I hope that this will encourage you to do more, because I know that you are not being paid as much as you should be doing this job. Yes. So that is a token
Thank
from
you.
us.
Thank you.
And on behalf of all those victims that you have helped, I say thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
God
you,
bless
Shkara.
you.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Next, we used to go to the news segment, but today we are going to take the kids first, because we have been hearing children, the kids today. We want to bring in our anchor for the kids segments, Jaden Sargent, to present to you the Kids Against Trafficking. Thank you, and please stay around.
Hi, I'm Jaden, and these kids sent in flags for their country willingly. And the first flag was from Nigeria, and another flag from Togo, and the last flag was from Benin. What nice flags they made. Thank you, and good night.
The mission of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is to prevent terrorism and enhance security, protect the borders against illicit trade, travel, and finance. During November, ICE, or the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, arrested 40 during a 3-day operation targeting criminal aliens and immigration fugitives in the Indianapolis area. They arrested an El Paso attorney linked to drug cartel in money laundering charges. U.S. Central Command commends ICE for hiring U.S. military veterans. In thank you to the local police department for their efforts in addressing the demand for commercial sex with women and children by targeting the buyers and traffickers. Each week, more and more people are joining in this movement to abolish human trafficking.
Thank you, viewers at home, for watching tonight. We are so grateful for staying with us throughout this time. We hope that you have been enlightened about what is going on with children victims of human trafficking here in Minnesota. and the advocacy that is going on, and the two wonderful people we have tonight who came to enlighten us more and the efforts they're doing. The phone number is on the screen, so you can call civil society at this number if you suspect a child to be a victim of human trafficking. Even if you are not sure, just give them a call and they know what to do from there. Thank you. Hope to see you next time. Send in your flags, children, and please nominate your advocate for the Advocate Excellence Award. We hope to see you next time. Bye-bye, and God bless you.